Good morning, good morning, good morning. Happy Wednesday morning to you, everyone. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. Hey, I really hope that you'll take advantage of the books and the material that are available to you. I've been hearing from so many people about how this series on the resurrection has been such a blessing to them. Did you know there's even one individual that's writing a book based upon this entire series? I think that's absolutely fascinating, and it's encouraging, and it is exciting. And so not only take advantage of the videos, but the book offers that I make. And, oh, by the way, don't let me forget, remember, in celebration of the 300th video in this study, don't forget I'm making a very special offer. The book, Leaving the Rapture Behind, and Can God Tell Time, absolutely free of charge. Now, again, this is, number one, this doesn't apply to overseas, okay? Unless you're willing, if you're willing to pay the postage for the books to you, the books will be free to you. Contact me about that, okay? Secondly, this is primarily pointed and offered to new students, those who have just begun their investigation of the subject of covenant eschatology, i.e. preterism. So if you got a lot of questions, what about all these time statements in the Bible? What about that? And if you're a dispensationalist, question the rapture. All right? So anyway, absolutely free of charge. This is my gift to you for sticking with me for over 300 videos in this study of the resurrection. So if you're a relatively new student, if you don't have any of my books, something like that, contact me and say, hey, Don, I would like to take advantage of the YouTube 300 offer. And be sure to send me your full, proper mailing address. Only one copy of each per family. That's all I can do. But be sure to contact me. All right. I want to follow up on what I mentioned to you yesterday. I pointed out that in Isaiah, the promise of the new heaven and new earth is couched firmly, posited firmly, at the time of the destruction of Old Covenant Israel, Jerusalem, and the temple. It was a short video. This one's going to be as short. It is a bit of rehash, a little bit of a rehearsal, a little bit of a repeat of what we talked about earlier, way back, all right? But it's directly related to yesterday's video, and that is this. Not only is the new creation, the new heaven and the new earth, posited, pardon me, at the time of the destruction of Old Covenant Israel, the Jerusalem, and the temple, the resurrection is likewise posited as a direct, inseparable corollary as the fulfillment of God's Old Covenant promises made to Old Covenant Israel. When Paul anticipated the resurrection, the adoption, the redemption of the body, Romans 8:23, he went ahead to say in Romans chapter 9 and verse 1 to 3 that the doctrine of the adoption, i.e. the redemption of the body, belonged to Old Covenant Israel after the flesh. You've just got to catch the power of that. What does that mean? Well, it means that if God's promises, God's Old Covenant promises to Old Covenant Israel after the flesh, if they have not been fulfilled, then Israel remains as God's covenant people. In Romans chapter 11, Paul anticipated the taking away of Israel's sin. And by the way, that time of Israel's salvation, he calls it life from the dead. Romans 11, verse 15. But notice what Paul has to say about the time of Israel's salvation. Now, the time of Israel's salvation is the time of the resurrection. Isaiah 25, 6 through 10. The day of Israel's salvation. The time when salvation to all of the nations would then be fully extended, come into full bloom, is the day of the resurrection. Now watch this. Paul promised, all Israel shall be saved. As it is written, the deliverer will come out of Zion. He will turn away ungodliness from Jacob. Watch. For this is my covenant with them. So, the time of the taking away of Israel's sin is the time of the fulfillment of God's covenant promises. But the time of the taking away of Israel's sin is the time of the resurrection. It's Israel's salvation. Therefore, the time of the resurrection is the time of the fulfillment of God's covenant promises to Old Covenant Israel. Thus, once again, if the resurrection has not taken place, God's covenant, God's Old Covenant promises made to Old Covenant Israel after the flesh, remains valid. Israel remains God's covenant people. Now, I want to tell you, for the amillennialist and the postmillennialist, that's fatal. Pure and simple, that's fatal. Because both of those paradigms tell us, oh, well, you know, God was through with Israel at the cross. How could God be through with Israel at the cross if Messiah had not yet come to take away their sin and bring in resurrection in fulfillment of His promises to Israel? It doesn't work, folks. It just doesn't work. And so as we are looking at the promise of the resurrection of 1 Corinthians 15, let us be reminded that Paul said the resurrection of 1 Corinthians 15 would be what? When Hosea 13, 15, or 14 would be fulfilled. That's God's Old Covenant promise made to Old Covenant Israel. The resurrection of 1 Corinthians 15 would be when Isaiah 25, verse 8, would be fulfilled. Isaiah 25, an Old Covenant promise made to Old Covenant Israel. The resurrection of 1 Corinthians 15 would be when Daniel chapter 12, verse 2 would be fulfilled. Daniel chapter 12, verse 2 is an Old Covenant promise made to Old Covenant Israel after the flesh. You see how it goes? You cannot put the resurrection of 1 Corinthians 15 off into the future without thereby affirming that Old Covenant Israel remains God's covenant people. However far, however long, pardon me, you extrapolate, delay, postpone the resurrection, it is that long that Old Covenant Israel, after the flesh, remains God's covenant people. Undeniable. Okay, hey, get a copy of my book, Who Is This Babylon? Go to my website, donkpreston.com, BibleProphecy.com, and order Who Is This Babylon? Be sure to send me a note that you saw the offer on YouTube or Facebook, and I'll pay your shipping. All right, thank you so much for joining me on this Wednesday. We will see you, Lord willing, nothing happens, on tomorrow. So we'll see you on the flip side.